Okay, sixth grade. Since we haven't had class a lot this week and we're trying to get through this weather unit, I think what I'll do is have you watch this video with the note sheet outline that you have, and then we can talk about these things and fill in the answers to the definitions and the concepts that we need to know before the final. And these weather questions will be on your final. So to start out, weather definition is the condition of the atmosphere at a certain time and a certain place. Climate is the overall weather over time in a certain location, but weather is the current condition of the atmosphere at a specific place. Okay, let's go to number 2. The amount of water vapor in the air is called humidity. The atmosphere, as you know, contains water vapor, and the amount of water vapor in the air is important to what type of weather that you are having at the time. So humidity. The amount of water vapor in the air. Now, if we want to give a value to the amount of water vapor in the air compared to how much that actual air can hold, that is known as relative humidity. And this is dependent on temperature. So at a certain temperature, a certain amount of water can be held by the atmosphere at that temperature. So the higher the temperature, the more water it can hold. So it's relative to the temperature. Relative humidity. And this value is usually in percent. So for instance, if the relative humidity, I don't know why it's doing that, humidity is 100%, that means that the atmosphere is holding as much water as it can for that temperature. Now, in the summertime, when it's warmer, because the air molecules are farther apart, it can hold more water vapor. Okay, so it feels more humid in the summer than it does in the winter. Okay, we did this in class. We use an instrument to measure relative humidity, and it's called a psychrometer. Psychrometer. Now what a psychrometer does is it involves 2 thermometers, and one of them has a piece of gauze over it that's wet, and that's called the wet bulb. The other one is dry, and that's called the dry bulb temperature. And by comparing the 2 temperatures, you can figure out by using a chart the relative humidity at a particular place at a particular time. So it's the percentage of water vapor that's being held by the atmosphere at that time. All right, let's talk about some general terms that you probably already know. Now, the process where water changes from a gas to a liquid is called evaporation. So think back to the water cycle. And evaporation. Okay, the temperature in which a gas condenses to a liquid is called the dew point. So for instance, when you wake up in the morning and the temperature has gone down at night, especially near the surface of the earth, temperature has gone down at night, so the water vapor in the air during the night condenses onto like the grass or the leaves of the trees or something that you know is dew, and it happens at a dew point there. Okay, so the collection of small water droplets or ice crystals condensed in air is called a cloud. And there's different kinds of clouds, as you know. You probably did this in your previous grades, so we're not going to get into the different types of clouds at this point. Okay, precipitation. Precipitation is where the liquids in the cloud fall to the ground. And there's 4 types of precipitation. So we're going to kind of skip over here and write the definitions in these next questions. When rain falls through a layer of freezing air, that is called sleet. So the liquid water falls from the cloud through the atmosphere. And if the atmosphere is cold enough, below freezing point, it will freeze as it's falling, and it will hit the ground as sleet. Okay, now when the water vapor changes directly up in the sky, when the water vapor, the gas, changes directly into a solid, that's when snow occurs. So there is a difference between sleet and snow. It has to do with how it's formed. Snow is basically where the water vapor that's in the air skips the liquid form or state and goes into the solid form as ice crystals, and that's snow. Okay, ice forming in clouds from rain and updrafts is called hail. Now the size of the hail depends on how often those raindrops or those hail stones go up into the cloud. So every time an updraft picks up that piece of hail and goes up into the cloud, a new layer of ice forms around it. So the stronger the updraft, probably the larger the hail. Okay, 12. Large body of air where temperature and moisture are similar throughout is called an air mass. You've heard the weather people talk about a warm air mass or a cold air mass. So a large body of air that's got the same temperature and moisture throughout it is called an air mass. Now, depending on where they're formed, describes the air mass. So if you have an air mass that's formed over water, like an ocean, at a high latitude, because high latitudes are cold, and oceans have a lot of moisture over them, in the air over them, we call this one a marine for the water, and since it's over a high latitude, we call it polar. So a marine polar air mass is one that is humid or moist, and it's cold. Okay, now if we've got another one over water, but it is low latitude, okay, it's going to be moist and warm. Okay, it's right there, Graham.